So here they are. Lovely hardwood case. Doesn't have military corners, but it's beautifully made. Lovely hand-cut dovetails with a sunken carrying handle, which I wouldn't recommend carrying it by at any point at this age. Interesting engraved brass on the outside, and so we open up, and there we have it. Two identically produced percussion pistols by Joseph Manton. You can see his name, Joseph Manton of London. Now, these originally started life as flintlocks, probably with a V-shaped pan. How do we know? Well, Manton was a very organised fellow, and he was kind enough to give us a number to refer to. So, if you look on the underside of the trigger guard, within the stand of arms is an engraved number, which I appreciate is not very easy to see, but it is in fact 4643 without a doubt. Look again at this side. There it is, 4643. It is actually repeated on the underside of the barrels, but I'm not going to take them apart because better left as they are, but I have seen them with my own eyes. Now, the other thing we notice about the conversion that's been done is that it has been done very much in the manner of the original lock making. So you can see this intricate engraved border which runs all the way around the lock. This has been repeated on the hammer. To me, this means that it was done by, once again, the same firm. If this was done by your local gunsmith down the road, it wouldn't look like that. That is a fine piece of work which has been excellently produced and copied to the original. Now, these may have gone through a couple of different stages, pill lock, etc., before becoming finally percussion. But if we think about it, these pistols were owned by a military, well-to-do type family. The number on the pistol underneath gives us a date of production from records of 1806. This was the flintlock period. Now, flintlocks were great, very attractive, superb looking pistols and great for their time, but there were a few flaws which it would suffer from, and mainly that would be unreliability. The fact that if you got your powder wet in your priming pan, you may not get successful ignition, your pistol wouldn't go off, you've only got one chance. So the officer who owned these at the time decided to send them or take them all the way to London and have them converted. Now that, in those days, was no mean feat. It might have meant a long coach journey, travelling for days, the risk of highwaymen, etc. along the way, and other such nasty folk. But anyway, it's my belief that these were done by Manton in London to a high degree, high standard, and thus returned as a highly reliable single shot pistol. So these pistols were kept to keep your eye in for a little bit of target practice. They've got open sights and a front sight to aim off. A little bit of dueling before it was banned. Settling arguments. If a fellow officer looked at your woman in a funny way, you were perfectly entitled to challenge him to a duel. These might have been used in such an instance. Now, I mentioned the date of their original production. This comes to us now, these days, courtesy of DL Black and good old Keith Neal. Two publications where they took enough time to research all the numbered examples that they had from Manton's records. Now, unfortunately, the exact pistols do not appear in the records at this moment, but we can look at the date and we can see that in 1805 they were down in the 4,450s. If we move forwards, come down the next page, 1806, we're down at 4,650. Now, what was that number? The number was 4643. So I would estimate that these pistols were originally made at the end of 1805 for an officer. So, which officer? It's 1805 or 1806. In the later book, 1806, we have a pair serial numbered 4623. That's a rifle, and that's very close in number. So, who do they belong to? Well, we go back to the escutcheon. That's our main clue. That's quite worn, this one. I would say that's his primary pistol. The lock has less colour upon it. If we look again at this one, it's a little bit clearer. Once again, it's our unicorn, as on the front of the box. The unicorn is facing left. He's Cupra, which means cut off. He has a flaming mane, a flaming beard. So we can at least look for that. This is where we turn to a copy of Everett's Peerage, 1953. This book is full of all the English families, all their coats of arms. Now, the closest I can get to, the closest possible crest, which relies almost entirely on unicorns facing left, is the family of Wombwell from Yorkshire. Now, with all respect, this family is still in existence. What's special about them? Well, various things. They all were fairly active, busy people. But what is particularly interesting is that the 4th Baronet, Sir George, served in the Crimean War and was in the charge at Balaclava. This is known as the Charge of the Light Brigade. Onward, onward, rode the 600 or 400 or how many, or not very many by the end. We look into Sir George's life. And there he is. This is an engraving of a very, very early photograph. He actually died in 1913. Amazing. Lived a long life. This research from the 17th Lancers book details how he rode in the charge, how he lost 2 horses, achieved the guns, got to the guns, was briefly taken prisoner, but in the confusion of battle, him and another officer managed to escape. But within the write-up, and within several different write-ups, it mentions that when he was taken prisoner, he had his sabre, his pistols, or pistol taken away from him by the Russians. He then managed to escape on an unseated horse and make it back to the British lines to become one of the famous survivors of the charge of the Light Brigade. Is this him? Was he the owner? I don't know. I've tried to contact the family. They do not want to know. But I did read about an auction where Balaclava relics were mentioned, and it talks about his pistols, his saddle, and the reins of his horse. What happened to those pistols? I have inquired whether the family still have any. I don't want to sell these pistols. I'm just trying to fill in the gaps. So if anybody has any wonderful ideas who these could belong to, or what intrepid events they have been involved in, please let me know. The one other point you might be thinking now is, well, if he surrendered his pistols, how come you've got them? What are they doing here in the West? Well, I don't believe these were his service pistols. I believe these were his keeping his eye in pistols, that he would go out at dawn, get his servant to hold a rock on his head, shoot it off a few times, keep his eye in, answer any dueling challenges. They've got a large style trigger which indicates for use with a gloved hand. So they were built for a military person. Were they Sir George Orby Wombwell's pistols? Did they travel to Balaclava with him? Did they stay in his tent? Did he return with them to England? I believe that the pistol he would have rode with was probably a Colt or a Beaumont Adams. The preferred weapon of the officer was the sabre. He would have had to give those to the Russians as demanded when he was taken prisoner, the Russian Lancers. But these would have been back in his tent for early morning target practice or settling disputes. If you have any ideas or theories, please let me know. And thanks for listening. They're an interesting set.